work that we would do in the coming months. We would first like to bring to Council's attention that this is a revised version of the document. It was issued on February 1st, Thursday. It has the same number, but now bears the Rev 1 designation, and it was sent by email by the Secretariat to all council members with a brief explanation of the changes to the original. As we explained in that communication, the Secretariat was made aware prior to the meeting that some additional work was still required on some of the proposed actions before consensus would be possible on those issues. So I'll point out what those changes are in the brief summary of the document that follows. To remind council members of the starting point, the GEF 8 replenishment policy recommendations include a decision to explore areas for streamlining the GEF project cycle in particular, with an objective of reducing transaction costs and facilitating faster access to GEF resources by countries. We have started work on this, focusing on a number of issues where agencies and countries have advised us are priority areas. And we've identified some other issues that require more work and more analysis. This exercise is also linked to harmonization with other funds, to the development of a project cycle for the new Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, and the overall GEF reform process that is underway that Carlos Manuel spoke briefly about this morning. These activities are happening in parallel, if not necessarily in lockstep. One of the messages that we seek to convey in this paper is that there still remains a fair bit of work to do. Process improvement and finding efficiencies in the GEF's business model, a model that's developed organically over the past 3 decades, will require actions across the partnership, impacting the Secretariat, the GEF agencies, local executing agencies, countries, and other bodies in the GEF partnership, including the Council. The analysis we did in the context of GBFF revealed that it may be possible to achieve some streamlining benefits through an expansion of an instrument that we already have, that is the medium-sized project. These generally have shorter preparation and approval times and provide a more agile option for countries and agencies, including MDBs, through a one-step approval process, among other things. We have therefore proposed an increase in the cap on MSPs from the current $2 million US dollars to $5 million US dollars, and we provide the rationale behind that. The change that we added to the document last week was to add a 4-week review process for Council for these projects, to provide an opportunity for Council to engage and to comment, notwithstanding the delegated approval authority to the GEF CEO. We think this still provides an appropriate balance between delegation and oversight and an opportunity to streamline. We also clarify that the treatment of project management costs for these projects does not change, and the current caps for PMC will remain based on the project dollar values, not whether the project is a medium or a full-size project. Further work and analysis on this element is required on the whole issue of project management costs with the help of the agencies, and so further adjustment may be coming. Just to conclude, we have listed in the annex the actions that still require more work and more analysis, consultation with agencies and countries. It's not an exclusive list, but it's meant more to report, as I said, on the direction of travel and the things that we're looking at. We will continue to work on potential streamlining options and bring to future council meetings any issues that can't be implemented within the authority of the Secretariat and that will require decision by council. Thank you very much. Council, over to you, Chair.
Thanks to you, Jonathan, for the presentation of this agenda item. With this, I would like to open the floor for questions and comments from the council.
You have the floor, Alf. Go ahead.
Thank you. I will try to speak slower this time. Our constituency would like to thank the Secretariat for this document and the suggested measures. This is an issue that is high importance, high on the agenda of our constituency, and is also an issue other funds are struggling with. In general, we agree with the streamlining measure presented to the Council for approval and the need for more analysis to be conducted for more streamlining measures. Regarding the increase from $2 to $5 million, we are wondering how this figure was chosen. What is it based on? If all projects up to $5 million are to be endorsed by the CEO, what is the percentage of projects outside of the IPs that will be going to council? We are also positive to the change suggested in the revised document regarding projects up to $5 million and the possibility for council to comment on projects ahead of the council meeting. We hope the system is easy and user-friendly. The issues brought up in the report are both important and complex and require a good understanding by the council. We suggest establishing an ad hoc working group with council members that would work closely with the GEF Secretariat in analyzing and suggesting additional streamlining measures for the next council meeting. The group could guide the Secretariat in terms of what analyses are needed and what types of measures could be suggested to the council. We can provide some decision language on this. Regarding the project management costs, we welcome more analysis of the adequacy of the cost levels. Is there a general view among the agencies that the cap for these costs are too low? We encourage the analysis to look at what the costs entail and alternatives to how these can be covered. For example, is the agency fee and the PPG included in the PMC? Is the PMC for GEF agencies or the executing entities? We also ask for a presentation of the administrative costs for a GEF project at all levels, trustee, agency, and executing entity. And perhaps such an analysis could be done by the IEO, for example, as part of the OPS 8. Other funds have worked on streamlining measures and have reduced the time from approval to execution. We would suggest that the GEF Secretariat discuss with the secretariats of other funds the measures that they have taken to streamline their project cycle. And as I mentioned, we have some suggested decision language. I could read it up, or we can have it sent to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alf. So Faisal is next. You have the floor. Lost you. No. Is your microphone on green? There. Okay. Now, yes.
I'm not sure it's working.
Now it is.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, Council members. The GEF CSO network did study the original paper, and we did prepare a statement by a subcommittee of the network 1 week ago before the issuing of the Rev 1 version of the paper, which I understand now was sent to council members with an explanation of the changes, but not informed to the GEF CSO network. Nevertheless, I believe that the elements within our statement are still relevant to the revised paper. So I would like to highlight the following comments and recommendations. Firstly, we welcome the effort to improve coherence and complementarity between projects and funding sources, as well as harmonizing project cycles and compliance requirements in order to reduce wastage and improve continuity of interventions undertaken in the same location. Secondly, we support continuation of the practice of separating the implementing and supervisory roles of GEF agency as well as the recommendation that dual execution should remain a policy exception. We recommend that the proposed exploration of reasons for the increase in dual execution requests include an assessment of the impact of such dual execution practices on project success. We offer the reminder that increasing the capability of national entities to design and manage GEF projects produces benefits beyond GEF projects themselves. As such, we recommend that shifting project execution responsibilities from national entities to GEF agencies should be avoided, except in circumstances where changing national conditions are likely to lead to project failure. We support the recommendation in the working document that the proposed use of one-stop project approval and streamlined reporting should be supported by deeper stock taking at midterm and completion. We support the proposal to raise the cap on medium-sized projects from $2 million to $5 million, but note that unless the volume of GEF finance is increased, this will result in less GEF projects per country. This may lead to further domination of certain GEF agencies in the portfolio and the potential exclusion of civil society organizations as executing agency for medium-sized projects. Originally, GEF introduced the category of medium-sized projects to give additional opportunities for CSO and local government to access GEF resources. But over the years, less and less CSOs are getting access. With the increase in the cap, this may decrease further. We therefore propose that a specific portion of medium-sized projects are designated for access by CSOs or non-state actors. In addition, the degree of access should be monitored and reported to Council to avoid the inadvertent exclusion of such entities. Fifth, we anticipate raising the cap of MSPs will result in an increase in complexity of such projects, and hence recommend that the allocation for project preparation also be significantly raised. This increased amount should include adequate budget for consultation with related indigenous peoples and local communities, as well as civil society. Sixth, we offer perspective that inflation and factors that adversely affect MSPs also adversely affect enabling activities and small grants, and therefore recommend consideration of raising the cap on GEF small grants, for example, from 50,000 to 75,000, as well as the cap for enabling activities. We recommend that the GEF Council and Secretariat also work to build the capacity of civil society organizations to participate in monitoring and evaluation of GEF-funded projects in order to increase the transparency and guide measures to take a whole of society approach as proposed for GEF 9. Eighth, we recommend that GEF do undertake deep dive analysis and learning that inform future learning, include increased focus on outcome and impact assessment. Lastly, we note the constraints on local and national CSOs to provide co-financing are recognized in the working document, and we recommend to simplify co-financing requirements will reduce the burden on CSOs and increase the options for CSO engagement in GEF programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gabriela, you have the floor.
Thank you, William, and thanks to Jonathan for the presentation and also the Secretariat for the preparation of the document. We would like to thank you for the document and the revisions as well. In our view, just first on a procedural note, the document covers many more issues than project cycle management or streamlining, and therefore we'd like to split the decision for transparency purposes. We prefer to tackle the point on the removal of geographic restrictions for the two agencies under a separate decision on agency coverage, and tackle the last element under letter B in a separate decision as well, because of most elements in the annex actually don't touch upon anything related to the project cycle management, but other policy adjustments and improvements. And we would love to see a revised decision in that regard. And I think the proposal from Norway on a working group would, in our view, also be separate from just the project cycle streamlining, because the project cycle streamlining proposal in the document is really just linked to the MSP increase of the cap. So on the substance of the document, we support the increase of the cap for MSPs to $5 million for the GEF grant and welcome your amendments regarding the project management costs in the revised document. And the aim to learn from this revision for the broader GEF portfolio. Could you further elaborate why the question on the geographic scope was removed from the paper in the revision? Would you like to withdraw your proposal on the broadening of the geographic scope of FECO and FUNBIO, or are you proposing to shift that section to any other business, just so we have a better understanding? Because my constituency would support the broader geographic coverage of these two agencies, but would like to know if these two agencies also requested it and which other geographic areas they're planning to cover. So beyond China for FECO and Brazil for FUNBIO. It would be particularly interesting for our constituency, obviously, if the number of potentially available agencies would be increased in Central Asia, because it's based on the latest assessments we've had, one of the regions which has the most limited number of available agencies. So having an additional one would be welcome. We see the elements in the annex as a bit of a mixed bag of different things, and believe in particular the question of the project management costs, as I think also referred to by Alf, will have to be covered in a broader context together with the agency fees and overheads. We have to understand how much money actually reaches the ground and how much goes into the oversight activities and how much of this is general overhead, just have a better understanding of that bucket of costs. We support most elements in the annex, but we're quite cautious with lifting the provisions on the agency reviews. The GEF does not have any reaccreditation mechanism or anything like that. And this is the only process by which the GEF can ensure that the policies of the agencies continue to be in line with the GEF policies. And it's an important oversight mechanism for us. Having said that, we'd be open to discuss some streamlining and room for improvement in the process overall, if it helps with the harmonizations, with the safeguards and accreditation policies of other multilateral environmental funds, especially the multilateral climate funds. And we know you've kickstarted that conversation, but I think it needs to be embedded into that broader discussion. Yeah, so we think at this point would have to be broader discussed with other efforts for harmonization and together with other funds to really increase accessibility for recipient countries and improve monitoring and impact measurement on the ground. Lastly, on the suggested group from Norway, we think that's an interesting idea to have a look at. And we'd be willing to work with others on decision text to find a suitable language for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Annette, you have the floor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, William. Thanks so much for this opportunity to discuss this here. And for Germany, actually, like already sort of shown a little bit through in the previous interventions, this is part of a much larger discussion and also extends to the joint declaration that the climate funds during the COP28 launched together. So that's all the 4 multilateral climate funds, and lots of the ideas were generated there or proposed actually sort of shine through here, and that's extremely welcome from our side. Very much support your drive to analyze the current processes and procedures within the GEF project cycle and propose a couple of measures. And as a board or council member of various of these funds, sort of to have sort of a more lateral perspective is very welcome. And in that regard, I also support the suggestion for a possibly a working group or something like that, in order to have this sort of But as mentioned in the document, some of the methods you propose to streamline within the GEF project cycle are clearly outside the GEF scope and mandate. They lie within the mandate of the partner countries or agencies. We also call upon all the relevant GEF stakeholders to review internal processes and increase their own efficiencies as well. And while we agree with both proposed decisions and very much support Swiss proposals now on the process of splitting it up and all the questions Switzerland posed. We are, for example, not sure to what extent lifting the geographical restrictions for Fonbio and FECO has something to do with streamlining the project cycle. Could you please elaborate on that? For us, on the additional measures or the annex, we would like to particularly encourage you as a secretariat to further explore a robust yet streamlined approach to reporting requirements. We think that's very much the right direction. And again, here possibly harmonizing across all the funds and making this more of a streamlined exercise for all the funds. As well as the requirement for monitoring agency compliance with GEF policies. And I noted what you just said, Gabriela, just as with GCF, where reaccreditation is a totally different story, yet there are similarly requirements that feel very bureaucratic and could probably have a vast potential for reducing this bureaucracy. On the other hand, the matter of possibly easing exceptions for crossover implementation and executing functions, we would very much like to see very detailed reasoning for doing this before actually considering it, because we also feel that there might lie some danger in there, which we would like to see analyzed properly before doing so. Yeah, and then on final note, we just had under agenda item 3 the GEF monitoring report and discussed on this matter of co-financing, which lots of council members commented on. And since one area under consideration for streamlining here is co-financing, we do want to note a concern that easing a requirement of a written co-financing commitment here doesn't seem to be the right step in actually encouraging agencies to rise to the challenge of additional co-financing. Rather, maybe it should be analyzed why these confirmations and commitments sometimes present challenges instead of easing a requirement. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Ramón.
Sí, ya. Gracias. En relación al ciclo de los proyectos, vemos positivo este objetivo de reducir los costes de transacción y facilitar un acceso más rápido de los países a los recursos del GEF. Creemos que se trata, como dice el documento, de un proceso de mejora continua y apoyamos las nuevas ideas para racionalizar, armonizar y aumentar la eficiencia. En este sentido, creemos que la Secretaría es la mejor posicionada para conocer estas lagunas, estos lugares donde se puede mejorar, y en ese sentido apoyamos la propuesta de Noruega y Dinamarca en la creación de ese grupo de trabajo con la Secretaría para trabajar en esas medidas de optimización y revisión. Creemos que estableciendo un ciclo simplificado de proyectos y programas para el nuevo fondo del marco global para la biodiversidad, esto también puede ayudar y debe ayudar y aportar un aprendizaje que sea útil para el GEF Trust Fund. Y finalmente, sobre la cuestión de aumentar el límite de los proyectos de tamaño medio, de los 2 millones a los 5 millones, queremos destacar que nos gustaría que esto derivara en un incremento de las propuestas de financiación que provienen de los bancos multilaterales de desarrollo. Esto lo han demandado históricamente, el adaptarse mejor a su forma continua de trabajar, a su forma de captar proyectos del sector privado y a sus procesos internos. Pues nos gustaría, y le preguntamos a la Secretaría si sería posible tener un reporte sobre cómo esta medida está avanzando y poder hacerle seguimiento a esta cuestión. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Ramón. Laura Rajaniemi, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. We also welcome the progress in streamlining and the changes that are currently proposed. After 10 years of using this gap of $2 million, rethinking the size of a gap is wise. However, we would have two questions. We wonder what the considerations are for this gap of $5 million and for not any other amount. So what was the reasoning behind it? And second question, how realistic is it to expect that the gap of this $5 million will incentivize project proposals by the MTBs? We also encourage the GEF to continue streamlining and simplifying its procedures, and would like to also support the Norway's proposal to establish ad hoc working group to elaborate more on the additional measures for streamlining. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stéphanie, you have the floor.
Merci. Je vais m'exprimer en français. Nous remercions le secrétariat et de manière générale, conformément aux engagements aussi pris lors de la reconstitution de FEM 8, la France soutient les initiatives du secrétariat pour rationaliser les cycles de projet, dans le but à la fois de faciliter un accès plus rapide aux ressources du FEM pour les pays bénéficiaires et de réduire les coûts de transaction. Donc, de ce point de vue, on soutient le principe d'augmenter le seuil de $2 millions pour les projets de taille intermédiaire, MSP. Mais comme vient de l'exprimer notre collègue argentine, nous souhaiterions connaître les raisons objectives du choix du seuil de $5 millions, qui fait basculer un volume conséquent de projets de full-size projects à medium-size projects. Ceci étant, cette mesure n'est pas vraiment une mesure de streamlining, qui fait basculer d'un process à un autre, mais on ne va pas au fond des pistes d'amélioration du cycle. De ce point de vue, merci au secrétariat pour l'annexe complémentaire qui liste des pistes d'amélioration, et nous soutenons la proposition faite par la Norvège d'un groupe de travail où les membres du Conseil qui le souhaitent seraient associés pour travailler aux côtés du secrétariat pour lister et creuser les différentes pistes d'amélioration. Je ne vais pas rentrer dans le détail, on pourra en discuter lors de ce groupe de travail.
Merci, Stephanie. So let me go to Jonathan for comments.
Thank you very much to all the council members for these comments and support in this work. I'd just like to confirm that the document, the revised document that we sent out, just has the one decision in it. The removal of the geographic restrictions was removed from the document, and some council members were asking for a bit of rationale behind that, and it was that we received feedback before the meeting that not all constituencies would be in a position to support this at this time, and that as we've been hearing on a number of issues, some additional analysis is needed on the rationale and the implications of doing that before we can before council could take a decision on that. So the idea is that's now deferred to a future meeting. We'll do some analysis as part of our streamlining efforts and come back to that. So just to confirm that decision is no longer on the table before council. On the MSP size of 5 million and how did we choose 5 million? We looked at the impacts of inflation since it was last increased from 1 to 2. And that was one thing we looked at. The other is for the GBFF project size at 5 million, we also wanted to harmonize to the extent possible the this project modality across both instruments. We looked at the average GEF project size in GEF 7, which was just over 7 million. The average size of projects implemented by MDBs in GEF 7 was just over 9 million. This excludes the NGI and obviously the small grants program from the analysis. We had, not as part of this paper, but previously consulted with MDBs on a number of different issues related to the project cycle. And what we heard from them was that the small project size wasn't necessarily the issue, as many used the GEF resources for leverage, testing new approaches, bringing grant resources to bear on loan products that push the envelope and that sort of thing. Excuse me. They also reported that they were in favor of project submission and approval on a rolling basis, which is one of the features of the MSP, particularly the one-step MSP that we have experience with. And that because it makes it easier to synchronize with internal approval processes. To the direct question, I suppose, about what would this mean in terms of percentages of GEF 8, it's hard to make that calculation at the moment, but we looked at if we had applied this in GEF 7, it would represent about 2/3 of the projects would be able to make use of this streamlined approach. Thank you for the comments on for the suggestion of an ad hoc working group. We found these to be obviously helpful in the past, particularly on the risk appetite. On what is included in the project management costs and does this impact agency fees? It's important to keep in mind agency fees cover the implementation and supervision costs of the agencies. That's the 9% or 9.5%, depending on the agency type. And the project management cost, which is capped at either 5% for full-size projects or 10% for medium-sized projects, is for the execution of the projects on the ground. That's the amount that goes to the executing entity that hires the staff that deliver on the project for all of the project management costs on the ground. So again, the agency fee doesn't vary by whether it's an MSP or an FSP. So there's no incentive at that level for agencies to use one over the other. Thank you for the suggestion to look at other funds as well. In fact, this is part of the long-term vision work. And those who may be familiar with the recent consultancy that was done to look at areas of potential harmonization across the funds did actually point out that there are some areas for further efficiencies across both funds. And one of those areas is the idea of the reaccreditation process in the context of GCF and the review of agency fitness against GEF policies in our case. Thank you for the comments on the dual execution and the detailed reasoning. From the way the Secretariat sees this is because dual execution, that is a GEF agency also executing a GEF project, so taking on both roles, essentially supervising itself. The policy requires that that case is an exception. And so we also see detailed reasoning for doing that as being necessary before an exception can be granted. But again, this is one of the areas that we think more work needs to be done. We've been looking at the history in GEF 7 and GEF 6, and it requires a fair bit of archaeology actually to determine within our own data what the case has been. So we'll continue to look at that. Agree also with the comment about co-financing, and that we do have the idea is to look at the challenges to confirming co-financing, making the best use of it, and not necessarily to ease the requirements for that. I think that should cover everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now I give the floor to Karin.
Thank you. I'll be very brief because some of my questions has been raised by others, and you have also responded to some of them already. We welcome the project cycle streamlining paper. It's very interesting. Sweden, I mean, we would have been prepared to agree to the removal of geographic restrictions on those agencies. Now I understand we're not going to do that. So, and I mean, I think I agree with the comments that it doesn't really fit into this particular document. And there are some other issues in the document as well that not necessarily should be part of the project cycle streamlining. There are slightly different issues. So if this process is streamlining the streamlining paper a bit, I think that would be good. So I'm not going to comment on some of the issues. And if there is consensus around having a working group, that could possibly be a way of moving forward. And that would also then make the council members a bit more involved in the discussions around what can we actually do when it comes to the project cycle. So I think that would be probably a good way to go. So if we are only going to decide on the cap for medium-sized projects from 2 to 5, we are fine with that. I still don't exactly understand what was the 5-10% will stay with the type of project rather than the level. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So Abby, you have the floor.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon to everyone. Simplifying access to GEF funding, reducing transaction costs both for the countries and the agencies, and facilitating faster access to funding are priorities for the U.S. chair. So we're very pleased to see that the Secretariat has continued work toward achieving these goals. We're comfortable with the proposal to increase the cap for medium-sized projects to 5 million. We agree that that was the proposal that did seem most oriented towards streamlining the cycle. So comfortable with the revisions to the decision text. I think, and also thank you also for making the changes with respect to the fees, because I think that could have created some perverse incentives among the agencies. Just some general comments. It does seem like the vast majority of time between project preparation and disbursement is agency planning and preparation and consultations with the countries. And I think that it's just important to sort of, for all of us to understand better the ways that you can encourage agencies to work toward faster planning and preparation, but without sacrificing project quality or consultations. On this issue of this sort of dual execution and implementing issue, I mean, I think it would be helpful for the council as a whole to learn a little bit more about this topic before making a decision. I know there are some cases where agencies take the executing role because of there's not a good option in terms of what the national capacity can offer if it's in a fragile situation. Also, I can imagine in non-grant instrument projects, sometimes you don't have like a logical executing entity. If you are sort of administering a credit line, are you going to give it to a client? So I think it would be useful to understand that. And then pleased also to hear that this project streamlining should help toward getting more project submissions from a broader number of agencies. As you know, like others, were concerned about the concentration. But I just want to close by underscoring the comment that several people have made about the importance from our chair about having these thoughts about streamlining being well coordinated with thinking about how to work better with the other funds. I think that we'd like the outcome of this exercise to be that the GEF sort of is thinking about how to do its work in a way that facilitates access to GEF funds, but also makes it easier to collaborate, for countries to be able to collaborate with the other funds and maybe bring in money from GCF or the Adaptation Fund or others as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I give the floor to Joshi-san.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you very much for the staff for preparing about the paper, and congratulations, the issues so useful paper. We appreciate the Secretariat's effort to streamline the project cycle, and also we support the Secretariat's proposal to increase the cap of MSP, because we think that it is in line with the policy recommendation of GEF 8 and the guidance of the COP28. We think that keeping the balance of the governance by the Council and delegation of authority is very much important. We hope that the effectiveness of this proposal and their impact of governance will be verified. And also further consideration will be given to the streamlining of procedures for the efficient execution of GEF fund. In this regard, I would like to say about setting the cap of MSP for GBFF. For consideration of MSP for GBFF, we think that it doesn't necessarily have to set the same amount of the cap of the for the GEF and the GBFF, given the significant differences in the scale of funding between the GEF and GBFF, and the situation that the size of activities of GBFF is not clear at this time. So we think it needs to seek appropriate own MSP cap for GBFF. We'd like to discuss this point later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So next, I give the floor to Wei Feng.
Thank you, Chair. And first, we also support the streamlining project cycle of GEF. And as we discussed this morning on the fiscal year 23 monitoring report, there's clearly a need to further increase the speed across all project cycles. In this regard, we support the proposed increase of the cap from 2 million to 5 million for CEO's endorsement. We also encourage additional measures to be analyzed to further improve not only the project cycle, but also the operational efficiency of GEF projects. This may include further simplify the procedures, maybe more delegation, and most importantly, more capacity building to the recipient countries. We also encourage the GEF Secretariat to work closely with other agencies to leverage the resource of GEF to encourage other agencies to also streamline their procedures, because the preparation of agencies is also an important part of the GEF project preparation. Finally, on the issue on original recommendation of removal geographic restriction of NIEs, we heard your explanation. But as a principle, we support this recommendation, and we feel this can provide more option, more resources available for regional countries. But that said, we are a little bit concerned on the process of preparing council documents. It seems there's a need to further improve the transparency and also broad consultations in the process of the council decision-making. With that, we encourage the Secretariat to work with the concerned NIEs to collect more information required and make a recommendation for the next meeting with a strong rationale. With this, thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Antonella.
Hi. Muchas gracias, William. En representación de la circunscripción Cono Sur, agradezco a la Secretaría por la elaboración de este documento y nuevamente, Jonathan, muchísimas gracias por tu presentación. Apoyamos el enfoque de simplificación del ciclo de proyectos, entendiendo que dicho enfoque se encuentra en línea con la estrategia de revisión continua y la mejora del ciclo general de proyectos. Estamos de acuerdo con la propuesta de aumentar el financiamiento de los proyectos de tamaño mediano a $5 millones, considerando que esta medida permitirá una mayor eficacia en la entrega de recursos a los países beneficiarios en una reducción de los plazos y costos. Además, entendemos que los proyectos de tamaño mediano tienen procesos de aprobación más rápidos, siendo una opción más ágil y eficiente. En cuanto a las medidas propuestas para el futuro, apoyamos la simplificación del proceso de aprobación de proyectos en un solo paso, siempre y cuando se establezcan procedimientos claros y bien definidos, entendiendo que esta medida busca la armonización y la coherencia con otros fondos bajo la administración del GEF, como por ejemplo el Fondo Marco Mundial de Biodiversidad, el cual también prevé la implementación de un esquema de aprobación de proyectos en un solo paso. Remarcamos la necesidad de contar con una definición más clara de costos de gestión del proyecto, especialmente en aquellos casos en donde las actividades contribuyen directamente a los objetivos del proyecto. En línea con ello, nos parece también muy importante establecer límites razonables a los costos administrativos de las agencias. Respecto a la ejecución de componentes por parte de las agencias, reafirmamos que los proyectos deben ser ejecutados por los países como regla general. Es crucial definir claramente los criterios para que una agencia pueda ejecutar un proyecto, considerando las circunstancias nacionales de cada país y entendiendo que la transparencia en estos procesos resulta crucial. Con relación al portal del GEF, proponemos mejorar sus capacidades y que se prevea un mecanismo para que se notifique automáticamente a los puntos focales cada vez que se registre alguna novedad en materia de proyectos. Esto ya lo hemos levantado en otras reuniones a fin de fomentar la transparencia operativa y poder dar un seguimiento detallado de los mismos por parte de los puntos focales. Por ejemplo, cuando una agencia envía el documento PIF o PRODOC al portal, cuando proceden consultas sobre los procesos a las agencias relativas a revisiones, realizadas por la Secretaría, por el staff, y las agencias responden, y cualquier otra actualización relativa a progresos y resultados relacionados con los proyectos. Y por último, y esto es un punto importante para esta circunscripción, en cuanto a las evaluaciones de medio término, consideramos que estas evaluaciones desempeñan un rol importante, por lo que proponemos que continúen siendo mandatorias para los proyectos de tamaño mediano de $5 millones, entendiendo que el establecimiento de procedimientos claros para incorporar los ajustes recomendados en estas evaluaciones resulta crucial para mejorar la efectividad de los proyectos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. I give the floor now to Richard from Australia.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, the Secretariat.
As a principle, we're very supportive of the idea of streamlining and harmonisation of processes. We know that as an objective, we want these processes to be fit for purpose. And that means looking at situations where they're excessively onerous and not achieving what we're looking to achieve and having undue negative consequences, particularly for countries, the Secretariat, as well as agencies in pulling things together. So that's why the fit for purpose is so important from our perspective. I think there's opportunities to look at ways of doing it better, particularly as risk has been talked about a few times, modifying the approach to consider risk. And that's why we're supportive of increasing the cap to $5 million, but also looking at broader opportunities to increasing flexibility or one-step process in other circumstances as well. That's probably that's beyond the scope of this agreement, this paper, but I think it's something that needs to be considered down the track. And for that reason, we're supportive of establishment of a working group, the proposal from Norway to look at opportunities and to be presented at the next meeting through consultation, but also highlight the opportunities for ongoing review. This is not a static process. We won't get it right by next council meeting, but I think that's worth thinking about. How do we take that forward as an agenda, looking at harmonisation with other funds as they evolve and through to GEF 9 as well. We're supportive of, in principle, that's taken out, the idea of a removal of geographic restrictions and look forward to discussion of that proposal in due course. We also agree to the concept of modifying the process of review every 4 years to take account of the circumstances of different agencies for something that's less onerous and providing more flexibility, while at the same time ensuring that any significant risks or changes in the circumstances do trigger, and this is where again the risk comes in, a more detailed review of that agency. We know that it's very much a impost on agencies going through the review process, not just for the GEF, but the GCF and other funds. So whatever we can do to achieve an outcome that minimises an impost, but still achieves that governance objective is something we would support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me give the floor to Jonathan to follow.
Thank you again, council members. Let me start with Karen's question to clarify the 5 to 10% issue on project management costs. The project management costs are itemized and included in a proposed budget that comes to the Secretariat at the time of CEO endorsement or approval, so that's the last step in the approval process. And so costs are then reviewed for reasonableness at that level. And there is a cap on those project management costs of 10% for medium-sized projects and 5% for full-size projects. As we're still working on an analysis of the overall project management cost issue, and there was another question about, do agencies find these to be sufficient to implement or to execute projects? That work we still need to work on that. So in this phase, while we're still working on that, we will not change the project management cost caps. So they'll remain at 10% for all projects up to $2 million and 5% for all projects over $2 million. So that original $2 million threshold will stay until we come back to council with all of our analysis on the whole project management cost issue. So I hope that clarifies. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion and the comments also on the dual execution issue, and that now is not the time to take a decision on that. Which is why we are not proposing something for decision at this meeting, but for a future meeting. The question from Antonella about what is a project management cost? How is it defined? We have an extensive list of what this entails in our guidelines, which are on our web, but it includes the sort of things that are required to execute a project, the project staff, the equipment, the costs of executing projects on the ground. And there's, again, a detailed list of what's included in that that we make available publicly into agencies and countries. Thank you for the comment on midterm reviews and that they should be mandatory for MSPs regardless. This is something that will require adjustment to the monitoring policy. So we'll look into this and it'll be part of the package of proposals that we bring later to council. Thank you.
William, if you allow me, I just wanted to complement complement to Jonathan and do a clarification with regards to there are no MSPs in GBFF. Just projects, and what we have there is only the delegation of authority to the CEO for clarification purposes. I don't want people get confused, GEF, trust fund, and the streamlining process with GBFF. What we have over there are just GBFF projects, and there's a delegation of authority for the approval of those projects. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there was one other question that I didn't get to, which was notification to OFPs through the portal, and that's part of the overall look at the portal capabilities that we'll include as well. So we'll work on that.
Thank you. Laura Bermúdez, you have the floor.
Gracias, William. Agradecemos a la Secretaría por los esfuerzos en las medidas para la simplificación del ciclo de proyectos. Este es un tema que es fundamental, dada la importancia que tiene para nuestra circunscripción, la relación que ello conlleva para el acceso a los recursos, que permita una implementación de acciones de impacto en las distintas áreas focales del fondo. Vemos que vamos por un buen camino. Pero también sabemos que hay otras oportunidades que debemos seguir explorando en el futuro y vemos con interés entonces la propuesta de la creación del grupo de trabajo para la simplificación de proyectos. Creo que va a ser un espacio importante de trabajo entre la Secretaría, las agencias, pero también los países para poder traer a la mesa y al grupo la experiencia que hemos acumulado estos años en la mejor ejecución de los proyectos. También queremos comentar que desde nuestra circunscripción podemos apoyar la medida de incrementar el CAP para los proyectos medianos a 5 millones. Esta medida puede contribuir en efecto a acelerar el proceso de aprobación de los proyectos, pero con la última respuesta que acaba de dar la Secretaría, quisiera preguntar entonces si estos proyectos de 5 millones no tendrían la evaluación de medio término. Creo que es importante hacer esa precisión porque, como dijimos en el punto anterior y varios colegas acá lo han repetido, la evaluación de medio término nos permite en los procesos de implementación de los proyectos identificar las fallas en el diseño del proyecto y ajustarlo para una mejor implementación. Entonces quisiera hacer esa pregunta. Respecto al incremento de las enmiendas para proyectos ya aprobados y respaldados, quisiéramos poder ahondar en las causas de este tema. El documento solamente presenta aquellos casos en los que se solicita la transferencia de responsabilidades de ejecución a las entidades nacionales. Por lo tanto, nos interesaría tener más detalle sobre la incidencia de estos casos y entender si existen otras causas adicionales. También vemos con preocupación el incremento de las funciones duales de las agencias implementadoras, lo cual se suma al llamado que se ha hecho reiteradamente en esta sala frente a la concentración de proyectos en determinadas agencias. Creemos que se debe mantener esta separación entre la implementación y la ejecución. Y si bien es necesario analizar cómo enfrentar esta situación, compartimos comentarios hechos previamente por Alemania sobre la necesidad de considerar este hecho antes de adoptar medidas para resolverlo. Sobre las excepciones que se plantean, tenemos inquietudes sobre la necesidad de incorporar como una excepción el caso en el que la política o procedimiento interno no permita a la agencia recurrir a una entidad ejecutora gubernamental o no gubernamental identificada por el punto focal operativo, sobre la base del riesgo evaluado o de la capacidad limitada de la entidad ejecutora identificada. Entendemos que se podría considerar otras alternativas que permitan mantener el country ownership, por ejemplo, buscar opciones adicionales. Y en todo caso, reiteramos que preferiríamos tener un diagnóstico antes de aceptar este tipo de medidas. Respecto al seguimiento del cumplimiento de las políticas del GEF por parte de las agencias implementadoras, consideramos que es fundamental que se siga realizando esta evaluación de forma periódica. Entendiendo lo que ello implica, estaríamos abiertos a revisar algunas alternativas y hacemos eco de las propuestas planteadas por Suiza, incluyendo la periodicidad, y llamamos la atención sobre la propuesta de que la evaluación se lleve a cabo solo en casos de novedades significativas, lo cual definitivamente no podríamos acompañar. Asimismo, exhortamos a continuar con el progreso de armonización con otros fondos multilaterales, como varios colegas lo han mencionado, incluido todo el proceso con el GCF bajo el Long Term Vision, que fue aprobado ya hace varios años. Esperamos que se pueda concretar en acciones tangibles con el fin de facilitar el acceso a los recursos de estos fondos por parte de los países receptores, a la vez incrementando la coherencia y la complementariedad, en este caso entre el GEF y el GCF, como entidades operativas del mecanismo financiero de la Convención Marco de Naciones Unidas sobre Cambio Climático, y que esta experiencia puede ser replicada en el futuro. Como hemos visto en las discusiones sobre el relacionamiento con el cofinanciamiento desde distintas fuentes, es un tema que requiere mayor deliberación dentro del Consejo. Como países receptores, recalcamos la importancia de reconocer los esfuerzos que estamos haciendo para poder garantizar la cofinanciación, que cada vez es más alta, incluido el ejemplo que se cita en el documento frente a la porción no concesional de los préstamos de la banca multilateral. Sin embargo, quisiéramos entender en qué medida esto contribuirá a simplificar el ciclo de proyectos o si esto debería ser considerado en otro espacio. Gracias a la Secretaría por las explicaciones sobre las cuestiones de las barreras geográficas de las agencias. Creo que es importante esta discusión que hemos tenido acá. Esperamos que en el próximo consejo volvamos a este tema con miras a ampliar el número de agencias y la cobertura geográfica. Llamamos la atención sobre la relevancia de la agencia Fumbio para el caso de nuestra circunscripción. También quisiéramos finalmente apoyar la propuesta que hace la circunscripción del Cono Sur sobre seguir mejorando el portal del GEF con un sistema de alertas de novedades sobre los proyectos cuando las agencias realizan cambios con el fin de que sean informadas de manera automática al punto focal operativo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Maintenant, je donne la parole à Babadran.
Merci beaucoup, William, de me donner la parole. Je voudrais aussi, au nom de ma circonscription, féliciter le secrétariat pour le travail qui a été fait pour nous présenter ce document qui est très informatif et sur la base duquel, naturellement, on peut valablement délibérer. Juste rappeler que nous avons étudié avec beaucoup d'attention tout ce qui a été donné comme orientation dans ce document, mais je dois préciser que à l'étape actuelle, dans la plupart de nos pays, de la circonscription, qui sont pour l'essentiel des pays des PMA, le Fonds pour l'environnement mondial constitue le plus grand bailleur des projets de protection de l'environnement. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous insistons davantage sur le fait que la procédure doit être rationalisée pour permettre à nos pays d'avoir accès le plus rapidement possible à ces ressources et mettre en œuvre les projets que les États ont mis en place. Nous comprenons parfaitement que le Fonds pour l'environnement mondial donne des financements qui sont en fait des catalyseurs. des financements qui doivent permettre de mobiliser d'autres financements pour mettre en œuvre les projets. Mais ce qui est constaté aujourd'hui, c'est que la plupart des projets qui sont financés avec les ressources du FEM sont de petits projets. Souvent, c'est des projets de 5 millions de dollars, 6 millions, 7 millions de dollars. Et très souvent, ce sont des projets qui ne peuvent pas avoir un impact significatif en matière de protection de l'environnement. C'est d'ailleurs la raison pour laquelle nous insistons régulièrement lors des différents exercices de formulation des portefeuilles de projets pour avoir de grands projets et éviter justement l'émiettement des fonds mis à disposition par le FEM pour avoir beaucoup plus d'impact sur le terrain. Sinon, avec les petits financements, on ne peut pas faire grand-chose. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous saluons la proposition consistant à doubler et même aller au-delà du doublement les financements pour les projets de taille moyenne qui quittent 2 millions pour aller à 5 millions. Mais nous espérons qu'on peut aller beaucoup plus loin si nous faisons davantage d'efforts en termes de rationalisation des moyens mis à la disposition des pays. C'est d'autant plus important parce qu'avec le FEM, nous devons davantage montrer des résultats sur le terrain. C'est extrêmement important. La protection de l'environnement, ce n'est pas seulement de la théorie. Aujourd'hui, c'est des investissements qu'il faut réaliser sur le terrain pour protéger les aires protégées, protéger la biodiversité, lutter contre l'érosion côtière, lutter contre la dégradation des terres. C'est des investissements au même titre que les autres secteurs d'activité. Et ça, on ne peut pas le faire avec un émiettement des financements. Il faut des ressources conséquentes. Et trop souvent dans nos États, je parle du cas de mon pays, quand vous demandez des ressources pour la protection de l'environnement, souvent on vous dit, mais vous avez des mécanismes internationaux, notamment le Fonds pour l'environnement mondial. Ce qui fait que très souvent, on a des difficultés pour mobiliser le cofinancement et mettre en œuvre de grands projets. Donc, je crois que c'est des questions sur lesquelles nous devons davantage réfléchir, en tout cas pour faire des propositions qui puissent renforcer cet effort que le FEM est en train de faire. Je suis d'accord avec Laura tout à l'heure par rapport à sa proposition consistant à faire la séparation nette entre agence d'exécution et agence de mise en œuvre. Parce qu'il ne sert aujourd'hui à rien de dire on a rationalisé les coûts de transaction, les coûts de gestion des projets, et au moment de la mise en œuvre, les agences compétissent avec les agences nationales chargées de mettre en œuvre ces projets. Parce qu'au-delà des activités que nous mettons en œuvre, je crois qu'il y a un processus de renforcement de capacité des agences nationales pour leur permettre de pérenniser les acquis qui sont réalisés avec ces projets. Donc, je crois qu'il faudrait qu'on regarde de très près, dans le cadre de ce rapport-là, ces aspects pour permettre aux institutions nationales d'avoir toutes les capacités pour améliorer les processus de mise en œuvre des projets du FEM. Voilà donc, William, ce que je voulais dire, tout en remerciant encore une fois le FEM.
Merci beaucoup. Now let's go back online and give the floor to Victoria.
Thank you, William. Just to say that we also welcome the streamlining efforts by the GEF Secretariat, and we also encourage you to draw inspiration from other institutions, other funds, also from the GBFF discussions when proposing further streamlining measures. In general, we are fine with raising the cap to the 5 million, but we would like to hear more about how the proposal will likely affect the engagement of GEF agencies and in particular of MDBs. So it would be very useful to get some feedback from agency representatives on the suggested streamlining. With regard to the other ongoing consultations or the other measures that are mentioned in the document, we would see merit in a working group as suggested by Norway to look at some of the issues in more detail. So for example, the one suggestion that the document makes on monitoring the agency compliance with GEF policies less than once per replenishment cycle, that's something where we would like to know a bit more about the pros and cons. So it could be good to discuss this a bit more in the group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Still online, Gisela.
Thank you, William. Let me first welcome the presentation provided by John, and thanks also the Secretariat for the revised document. As we generally agree on the content of the document, and in particular, we appreciate the continuous efforts by the Secretariat to put in place a cost-efficient management with the objectives to reduce transaction costs and facilitate faster access to GEF resources by the beneficiary countries. We can endorse the request for increasing the cap for medium-sized project to $5 million to be approved by the CEO on the delegated authority. Having said this, we have some comments. The proposed measure will tackle only the number and volume of medium-sized projects. In our view, this measure is not sufficient to streamline the project cycle. And actually, Annex 1 listed many other measures which have been evaluated in the consultation with agencies, like Jonathan mentioned before. Furthermore, we are not convinced that the proposed measure will incentivize project proposals through MDBs, something that we would really see increased. Rather, this could be a perverse incentive in the GEF activity, encouraging agencies to present many 5 million projects for easiest approval process to the detriment of good projects with a fair geographical distribution. We acknowledge that further proposal will be elaborated by next council meeting, as stated in the decision text. But again, we would have preferred to consider a more comprehensive and elaborated proposal based on an analysis on how to reduce the project preparation time and the lengthy review. We look forward to the further elaboration on additional measures, and we look forward in particular on actionable measures developed jointly with other major climate funds, as announced in the joint declaration presented in Dubai at COP28. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll give the floor to UNEP. I can't quite see who's going to speak, but UNEP has the floor.
Hello, good afternoon. And many thanks again to the CEO for offering the opportunity for agencies to intervene during council meetings. A few of the agencies, in fact, all the UN agencies, World Bank, WWF, IUCN, and others, we welcome the proposal from Norway to set up the working group on streamlining. And in the spirit of the partnership, we would like to request your consideration towards agency participation in the working group, as agencies are often confronted to challenges reconciling GEF with member state policies or on our own organizations, as well as recipient country policies or practices. And it would therefore be beneficial to bring all the perspectives into such a critical discussion. In fact, we brought several issues and suggestions to the GEFSEC over a year ago when we jointly organized a retreat. And thus we agreed to set up a working group on streamlining with MDBs, international NGOs, and UN agencies representing the breadth of the partnership. We therefore see this as an opportunity to fast track that work if we are still considering the June Council deadline. We haven't consulted obviously all the agencies, but given the interest that they demonstrated during the last retreat in April last year, I would think that they would welcome the opportunity to be involved and represented in the working group, should it be agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Next, Ben, you have the floor.
Many thanks, William, and also many thanks, Jonathan, for the paper. It's great to come in sort of at the end of the list, actually, just to hear the many points which are being made. And as before, because many points have already been made already, I'll keep this as short as possible. So firstly, yeah, we agree to raising the MSP cap to $5 billion. as others have said, we're very much fully supportive of improving access to funds and reducing the transaction costs for countries. Is why, by the way, the UK was keen to set up a task force on access to climate finance. It was, by the way, great to hear Senegal talking about why it's also important to increase that speed of access to funds as well. We recognize, I think Jonathan made it, US made it, many other people have made it. There's many other initiatives going on at the moment. So it's useful to keep that in mind. We welcome, obviously, the statement which was made by the 4 funds at COP28. As Columbia said, I think we particularly note the long-term vision on improving harmonization with the Green Climate Fund. It was mentioned in the report, I think in paragraph 5 or something like that, but it wasn't really discussed any further. So it'll be useful to understand when we will actually hear more about what's happening there. We obviously note that the annex of issues to be taken forward, that's an annex which will be taken forward, obviously not for agreement now, that's our understanding. But obviously we very much support those issues to be taken forward quickly. And finally, yeah, we welcome Norway's suggestion on an ad hoc working group with the Secretariat to speed up some of these processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor back to Jonathan.
Thank you, William. Thank you to all the council members for the additional comments. I think there was just one question among those, and that was with respect to the midterm review, the MTR. Currently for medium-sized projects, the MTR is optional, but it's strongly encouraged. So at the moment, projects under $5 million would have MTRs that are strongly encouraged, but not required. Again, something that we would probably need to look at and analyze as part of a suite of proposed policy changes, and so that would require a change to the GEF monitoring policy. I think that was the only question. I just, again, thank you for all of the good suggestions and the positions from the council members. This is very good guidance for us for the further work that we need to do.
Thank you, Jonathan. I would like to react to a comment from Argentina and Colombia. I'll do it in Spanish. Muchas gracias a Antonella y Laura por... Muchas gracias a Antonella y Laura por traer el tema del portal. El tema del streamlining no es solamente un proceso de simplificar el ciclo del proyecto, sino también facilitar la información entre los diferentes actores, la Secretaría, los países y las agencias. Por lo tanto, el abordaje que hacemos en la Secretaría es integral. No es solamente el simplificar los procedimientos para facilitar el acceso, sino usar todas las herramientas posibles que tenemos a mano para que el trabajo entre las agencias, la Secretaría y los países sea más eficiente y más rápido. Y en este contexto, el portal y la revisión del portal, el fortalecimiento del portal es tremendamente importante. Y gracias a ustedes dos que hacen esta observación. Nosotros en la reestructuración del GEF hemos determinado la necesidad, y esto fue algo que yo noté apenas entré al GEF hace 3 años, de que el GEF no tiene un gerente administrativo de la Secretaría. Al no tener personería jurídica, el GEF, nos apoyamos muchísimo en servicios que nos presta el Banco Mundial, pero teníamos componentes estratégicos en lo operativo y en lo administrativo totalmente dispersos. Unas personas hacían presupuesto, otras personas hacían recursos humanos, otras personas manejaban el portal, otras personas. Y dentro de la reestructuración hemos determinado hacer una pequeña unidad de administración general y nuestro compañero Peter Lalas va a ser el administrador de la Secretaría. Y una de las tareas más importantes que tiene Peter en sus manos va a ser el análisis más profundo de la eficiencia y la eficacia del portal. Yo considero que hay una gran tarea por delante para facilitar las labores, particularmente los puntos focales operativos. Así que quisiera hacer este comentario en alusión a los comentarios de Laura y de Antonella. Así que muchísimas gracias. So now let me switch into English for a little bit. I see that that there's a high interest on council members with regards to establishing a working group. We got multiple precedents to this situation. The latest one was when we agree on working on these other documents that has to do with the risk appetite. And I truly believe that this is a great idea, and I welcome the participation of the agencies in this working group. As we did it before, there is no need in order to proceed with a decision on a working group. There is no need to do a reform on the proposed draft decision. I would include this in the highlights of the council, the same way we did it when we agreed to establish a working group on risk appetite. So for your information, dear council members, there is no need to do a change in the proposed draft text with regards to this specific issue. And I will include this in the highlights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we still have a few speakers. Let's start with Prabhas. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you for the chair. I'm Prabhat, Secretary to the Ministry of Environment, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has received 19 million USD through 8 GEF cycle, and accordingly following projects were submitted. Wildlife Conservation for Development Integrated Program, GEF agencies IUCN, allocation 4 million USD, status not approved. Food System Integrated Program, GEF agency FAO, 4 million USD, that project approved. Sustainable Cities Integrated Program, GEF agency UNEP, 4 million approved. Sustainable Management, Terrestrial and the Marine Protected Areas and Environmental Sensitive Areas, that project GEF agency UNDP, 5.1 million USD approved. GEF Small Grants Project, GEF agency UNDP, 1.9 million. Project status is pending. So accordingly, 13.1 million USD utilized and 5.9 million USD not utilized. Some project proposals prepared in accordance with the national priorities in Sri Lanka. So we expect more transparency and clarity on the rejection of proposals to enable us to improve and resubmit this project identification form for GEF consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Jeffrey from FAO.
Okay, thank you, William. Thanks to the CEO and the Secretariat for bringing these important issues to the Council's attention and for listening to our experiences, the agency's experiences on implementation challenges. On the issue of global dual execution, we note Council's request to understand more about this issue. And so our comments are responding to this request. From FAO's perspective, the question is not so much whether a GEF agency should be allowed to execute fully a GEF project. Full dual execution is rare for FAO. Dual execution, the dual execution question is not an all or nothing proposition most of the time. In most cases, for FAO, it involves a country's request to help execute a small amount of a GEF grant to support a country in a targeted, specific way. For example, on training national executing agencies, staff, on integrated landscape management, or improved soil management. In these cases, most of the GEF grant is executed by an external partner, not by FAO. Indeed, FAO channels 95% of its GEF 7 envelope to executing agencies And we're further working to streamline and improve our operational modalities to broaden access to executing agencies while managing risks in the simplest way. However, countries often request FAO's modest execution support to help strengthen key technical or fiduciary capacity and to help sustain results over time. Indeed, the countries represented by this council created most of the GEF agencies, and they created them for different reasons, to fulfill different functions. And so it is natural for countries to expect different types of support from the different GEF agencies. We think that the streamlining process should, in the end, better acknowledge this. FAO recommends more adaptive management provisions to tackle more effectively and efficiently unforeseen risks and capacity gaps when they arise. The more adaptive and agile GEF's policies and procedures, the better the results and the lower the risks. Treating any change to project execution arrangements as a major amendment seems unnecessarily cumbersome in this regard. We appreciate GEFSEC's approach to address this issue by developing clear criteria for dual execution. Streamlined criteria will help us and the Secretariat to respond to countries' requests and to help limit those exceptions and better monitor compliance. And finally, we support UNEP's points made just a few minutes ago regarding the working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Gabriel, Q, you have the floor.
Thank you, William. Our constituency, Southern Africa, would like more clarity on the issue of streamlining, and especially how it will affect recipient countries. And also, we would encourage the Secretariat to consider including recipient countries, not only LDCs, in the working group that will be established, and to also include agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gabriela, you have the floor.
Thank you, William, and sorry for taking the floor again. It's actually on 2 points, one of them being the midterm reviews. Very much understand the proposal from Antonella and Laura, and I think that's very interesting because it wasn't on our radar at all that we would lose the midterm reviews. And I think similar to the resolution we found on the project management costs being attached to the project type or the level of money, I would suggest we just do the same, like revise that the midterm review, mandatory midterm review, be attached, maintain on the same monetary level as it had been up to now, which would resolve the concern that we have heard from our Latin American colleagues. And I think it's in our favor, especially if recipients are asking for this to better monitor their own projects. I think we should, as a council, support that effort very much. And on the dual execution, because it came up in our own constituency, so we have few members who raised this, and as Switzerland, we pushed back quite strongly in saying we really want national execution, similar to what we've heard from recipients around the table. So it's interesting that some recipients are asking for dual execution. And so I think for us as Switzerland, it would make it easier to discuss with them, and also for the agencies active in our region to discuss with the countries if the exception criteria were very clear, right? If it were very clear under which circumstances such an exception can be granted, especially if we feel a country should have the capacity, or we should invest in increasing their capacity to really do national execution, right? Then for an agency, it's difficult to push back if you get that request. But if you have a clear list of criteria of when that exception is being granted, you can also better engage with the country. So I think those criteria would make sense to look at them. So I would definitely, at least from our chair, welcome if we would also have a conversation about those, for example, in the context of the working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gabriela. Antonella, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, William, y pido disculpas por pedir nuevamente la palabra. Gracias, Gabriela, por escuchar nuestras inquietudes. Regresando a las evaluaciones de medio término, y bueno, específicamente ante nuestra propuesta, ¿no?, de que sean mandatorias para los proyectos de tamaño mediano, ¿no? Me gustaría, de base, que la propuesta, primero, muchas gracias, Jonathan, por haberme explicado, por haber dado las aclaraciones del caso, pero me gustaría que quede de mínima los highlights, que la Secretaría va a hacer un análisis o no sé, ver de qué manera se puede evaluar esta posibilidad para que en concreto podamos tener estas evaluaciones de medio término para que puedan ser mandatorias en este tipo de proyecto. Bueno, después tal vez eventualmente podamos verlos, sino que queden en el proyecto de decisión, pero bueno, me parece importante que haya un compromiso de parte de la Secretaría para que pueda empezar a explorar, ver si es que existe algún tipo de incoherencia o si es necesario que se actualice algún tipo de política para que esto sea posible. Gracias.
Gracias, Antonella. Samantha, you have the floor.
Thank you. The Caribbean constituency welcomes efforts by the GEF to streamline the project cycle in order to reduce transaction costs and facilitate faster access to GEF resources. Like other countries, we support the increase in the MSP cap and call for a commensurate increase in the project management costs for the MSPs. We also strongly encourage an upward revision of the PMC cost for FSPs, as the current limit of 5% poses severe restrictions on countries' ability to attract qualified personnel, given that the remuneration offered is sometimes not comparable to other similar positions in country. Globally, we have seen a significant increase in prices, and therefore the PMC costs assigned to both MSPs and FSPs should be reflective of this upward trend in global prices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Laura Aguirre, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello to everyone. I'm going to speak Spanish. En lo relativo al tamaño de los proyectos, decir que desde nuestro lado estamos de acuerdo con la simplificación y de los procesos, pero sí enfatizar que queremos mantener el llamado o a un llamado muy fuerte a que se mantengan los revisiones de mediano término o bien que se revise la obligatoriedad. En cuanto a lo del portal, quisiera agregar que además de la importancia para que los puntos focales operativos hagan bien su trabajo, esta iniciativa, Carlos Manuel, es muy bien recibida porque creo que ayudaría a los puntos focales operativos y políticos a aumentar la transparencia con la ciudadanía. Creo que cada vez es más difícil para nosotros dar respuesta a tiempo. Sabemos que en el GEF y seguramente en las agencias los recursos se cuidan y se cumple con requisitos fiduciarios, pero la velocidad de los requerimientos de la ciudadanía sobre la ejecución de los fondos ambientales es impresionante. Entonces, cada vez somos más incapaces de dar una respuesta satisfactoria a los ciudadanos a la velocidad y con la actualidad que ellos no lo piden. Entonces, eso es muy bien recibido. Finalmente, sobre el working group, decir que, bueno, sé que esto es una idea apenas y que no necesitamos modificar, pero decir desde ya que estaríamos interesados en participar de alguna manera en este grupo de trabajo para poder avanzar en los siguientes pasos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Laura Bermúdez, se pide la palabra.
Gracias. Solo quiero manifestar el apoyo de nuestra circunscripción a lo solicitado por la circunscripción del Cono Sur, Centroamérica y apoyado por Suiza respecto del mantenimiento de la evaluación de medio término para los proyectos hasta 5 millones. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, and it is very helpful for us to hear this feedback from all council members. One option, we could deploy the same option we're using for the project management costs, and for all projects over 2 million, the MTR would be required, and for those under 2 million. So we wouldn't change anything in terms of the requirements for MTRs until we've had a chance to have a deliberation with this working group that's been proposed and come back with more concrete recommendations. So, Chair, I think that's one of the options before us.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thanks to everyone. I feel that there is a consensus within the council members on the need to address the issue of the midterm report for this proposal of the increased cap on MSPs. What I would like to propose to you all is to allow us at the Secretariat to work on this immediately. We will take a decision on this agenda item, and I will bring this as soon as possible, probably tomorrow, so we can have enough time for us to work, share the text with you all, and then we can come as we adjust the agenda tomorrow and be able to take decisions on this agenda item. Any objections to this? Okay, thank you so much. So with this, I will now go to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 6, UNDP 2023 third-party review of minimum fiduciary standards. Once more, I'm delighted to ask Jonathan to present the document GEF /C66/11 UNDP 2023 party review of the minimum fiduciary standards. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am pleased to introduce the third-party review of UNDP for 2023. This document comprises two parts. One is the full unedited report from the independent reviewer, and a summary, and the second part is a summary risk-based review and recommendation prepared by the Secretariat. This is in keeping with the custom and with the requirements of GEF policy. I'll just give a brief introduction to the context and recommendations, and then I will turn to the third-party reviewer, Mr. John Fitzsimon, who will be joining us remotely from Europe by video. Just to remind Council of the background, UNDP's own Office of Audit Investigations found issues with projects back in 2020. Council then requested UNDP to advance the production of its self-assessment against the GEF fiduciary standards, which was then reviewed externally and submitted to Council. A second self-assessment and review was then submitted in 2022 as part of the review of minimum standards of all of the agencies, as was planned for the end of GEF 7 and was completed by KPMG. Finally, Council requested that this third self-assessment and review be presented to this Council meeting. Also to recall the special measures that were put in place for UNDP. There were three of these. First, submitting checklists with each project submitted for CEO endorsement. Second, circulation of projects to Council for review prior to CEO endorsement. And three, reporting monthly on UNDP's management actions against its audit findings. And Council members will have hopefully received the most recent report from UNDP that was just sent out last week. All of these three special measures were intended to continue up to the time of this meeting, at which time the requirements would be subject to review by Council. Based on the outcome of the third-party review, the Secretariat concurs with the recommendation that these special measures are no longer required, and we've included this in the recommendation to council. I would like to now introduce Mr. John Fitzsimon, the third-party reviewer for this exercise, who will present a short summary of his findings and recommendations. Over to you, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me satisfactorily.
Yes, we do.
Good. Thank you for the opportunity to present my report. As the report comprises an executive summary and a detailed section of some 161 paragraphs over more than 50 pages, let me therefore just propose to make a few salient points about the review. And I'll just put my video on. There we are. I'm sorry about the lighting. I'm in a hotel at the moment. I don't have much control. The review carried out during the second half of 2023 and being presented today is the third such report on UNDP under GEF policies introduced in the last replenishment cycle. As indicated in the report, paragraph 20 specifically, I've concluded that UNDP has progressed from partial compliance in 2021 to full compliance in 2023. That is to say, not only does UNDP have the policies and procedures in place to meet the GEF minimum fiduciary standards, but that it has been able to show a sufficiently sustained track record of implementing them at the time of the third review in 2022. Although the prior 2022 third-party review had also reported full compliance, this 2023 review did not take this for granted. In reviewing UNDP's June 2023 self-assessment, I considered afresh the evidence of both policy alignment and application, and undertook to ensure that the latest performance-related evidence was considered. I also thought it important, in view of the results of the earlier third-party reviews and Council's decisions on these, to include in the report a degree of detail for each standard, supported wherever possible by footnoted links to relevant publicly available documents to explain the reasons why I concluded full compliance. And I hope that the report succeeds in this regard. Behind the report is a very detailed and lengthy working paper made available to the GEF Secretariat, which goes into further depth for each standard, documenting the basis for the assessment. A draft version of this working paper was shared with UNDP prior to the conclusion of the review. The GEF policies provide guidance for the conduct of independent third-party reviews, and I just want to note that the review was cognizant of and applied the scope and principles set out generally in the policy on monitoring agency compliance with GEF policies, and more specifically, paragraph 11 of the policy on GEF's minimum fiduciary standards. These apply the concepts of reasonable assurance, comparability, and flexibility of agencies to meet the GEF minimum fiduciary standards in different ways relevant to their circumstances. While testing was not conducted to the level that would make a third-party review an audit, the review did rely on the conclusions of credible independent audits to support conclusions on compliance wherever they were available. This is particularly relevant to a globally decentralized organization with a large GEF portfolio, which is the case for UNDP. As anticipated in the third-party review terms of reference, these audit reports were also consulted to ensure that the risks of non-compliance were fully considered. The United Nations Board of External Audit and the UNDP Office of Audit and Investigation audit reports consulted and noted in paragraph 10 of that report. In any such third-party review, judgment must be applied, particularly as to determining whether long-term change processes addressing recognized gaps had achieved sustained application of minimum requirements. UNDP has been engaged, in some cases earlier than 2020, in corporate projects to improve its effectiveness, efficiency, and compliance. Since 2020, this has been an integrated whole-of-organisation response to concerns raised on the GEF portfolio, with application across GEF's programs and operations, but also well beyond the GEF portfolio. I trust that the report sufficiently explains why I concluded that UNDP had now reached a point where I feel it can be monitored under regular rather than special GEF procedures. For UNDP, the implementation of measures adopted under its corporate change projects are an ongoing task. The GEF has the opportunity through its ongoing monitoring and through cyclical compliance reviews to keep UNDP as well as other GEF agencies under the microscope. Thus, this third-party review serves as a point-in-time benchmark. Finally, as acknowledged in the report, I wish to express my appreciation for UNDP's cooperation in ensuring that this third-party review could be conducted efficiently. And particular appreciation is given to the Vertical Funds team in the Bureau of Policy and Program Support. I also want to thank the GEF Secretariat for their support during the review and reporting phases. If you have questions today on the review, I'll be able today to respond. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, John. And with that, we pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much to both. And with this introduction to this topic, I would like to open the floor for comments or questions from the Council.
Thank you. Richard, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to express my appreciation to John for doing the reports and the Secretariat and also UNDP for their commitment to go through this process with such rigor. I think it's really important for the GEF, given the significance of the UNDP as part of the GEF to its integrity, and being able to demonstrate that publicly to the ongoing integrity of the GEF. And I think the process has been conducted really does showcase how important the GEF sees this as an issue, and demonstrating that getting on top of fraud is such a key priority when it does occur. We note the successful completion of the review as indicated by John, and from our perspective, we are very comfortable with the continuation of the special requirements, subject to, of course, anything that does come up that's significant in future routine assessments. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabriela, you have the floor.
I'm sorry, it's not Gabriela, but it's me, Andre. No worries. Yeah, we would like to thank the reviewer for his thorough work and also thank the Secretariat for preparing the document. We are really pleased to note that the findings of the third-party review report that all the indicators are green now, and we acknowledge the efforts of UNDP to achieve compliance, and we commend UNDP for this achievement. So as a consequence, we agree that the additional requirements as described in Decision 26/2021 are in general no longer needed at this time. However, the third-party review mentions one element which we think might deserve special monitoring, namely the national implementation projects. As these projects are not audited by UNDP's Office for Audit and Investigations, audit reports on these projects conducted by third-party companies are not public. Thus, we would like to suggest that the main elements of audit reports on projects implemented through the NIM modality, National Implementation Projects, would be communicated to donors either through a summary or a confidential presentation by UNDP to interested council members, alternates, and advisors. In line with the findings of the evaluation on learning from challenges, we see this as a learning opportunity and believe it could provide some helpful insights also in view of the discussion of potential criteria for exception of the default implementation method through national executing agencies in the GEF. Finally, we would like to know what proportion of GEF projects are implemented under the NIM modality by UNDP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura Rajaniemi, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. We would also like to thank for the comprehensive reporting over the years. And we attach the highest importance to the fiduciary healthy status of GEF and its implementing partners. And therefore, as a more general note, we also ask the GEF to keep us informed of all inquiries regarding fiduciary issues in a timely manner, since we as council members also need to be accountable to our parliaments and populations which provide the funding for the GEF. We have a few questions regarding the digital platform Quantum, whose, as written in the document, rollout and implementation has been influential in strengthening UNDP's capacity to effectively comply with the GMFS. It is written that the Quantum brings stronger preventive controls, and we are sure that this is what the Quantum is supposed to do, but are we really able to draw that conclusion in practice? Did the third-party reviewer have access of reports evaluating the full rollout of this Quantum as of January 23? And would it make sense to keep a close eye on how the Quantum will perform in reality? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karin, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. We believe UNDP have now fulfilled all parts of the Council's previous decision, and we can support the decision not to continue with special follow-up and control of UNDP by the GEF Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Abby, you have, no, it's Rob, sorry.
No, thank you very much.
I checked this time, I checked.
Right. No, thanks. I don't mind being confused with Abby at all. Thank you. Thank you, John, and thanks for the report from the third-party reviewer too. That was very, very helpful. Since this issue first came to light in 2020, we have stressed the importance of all agencies meeting the GEF minimum fiduciary standards. In particular, we were concerned about the allegations of whistleblower misconduct and gaps in financial safeguards. From what we can tell, and just what we heard in that report from the third-party review and UNDP's self-assessment, UNDP has updated their policies to comply with the GEF standards, and we have been able to see these policies in action. We can support the council decision to remove the additional reporting requirements. We do note that the third-party review recommends continued monitoring of the separation of implementation and execution functions in UNDP's GEF portfolio. How is UNDP managing this monitoring? Are there internal guidelines that UNDP follows when asking for an exception to implement and execute a project? So those are just a couple of questions that we have, but in general, congratulations to UNDP. We're really pleased with the progress and support the council decision to remove the additional reporting requirements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sujoshi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the third-party review that UNDP's compliance evaluated to be similar to that of the other GEF implementing agencies. Governance of implementing agencies is very important for maintaining the credibility of the GEF, and we urge UNDP to prevent recurrence of irregularities, such as false declarations, so that they are not repeated again. In this regard, please allow me to mention about UNDP Chad's case, the project name Community-Based Climate Risks Management in Chad. This case shared by email on January 13th, 2024 in Japan time was explained that we will not be posting it on the GEF website for confidential reasons. We completely understand to refrain the posting on the GEF website for public. However, at the same time, we think that UNDP and the GEF Secretariat have accountability to the council members for the summary of the case and the remedial measures. we would like to ask UNDP and GEF Secretary to provide an appropriate explanation to the council members. In addition, regarding the consideration of the improvement of simplification of access, we think that it is necessary to always keep in mind the governance risks as raised in this agenda item. Thank you very much. Back to Chair.
Thank you very much. Emily, you have the floor.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon, colleagues. Our constituency would also like to thank John for the report and also the presentation, as well as the GEF Secretariat and not least UNDP for the comprehensive reporting. We appreciate the efforts undertaken by UNDP to ensure full compliance with GEF policies, and we concur that the additional measures applied to UNDP over the past years are no longer required. As brought up by the US, we also take note of the need to continue monitoring of the separation of functions, as we've also just discussed, to ensure that this is consistently applied across the GEF portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stéphanie, you have the floor.
Merci. Ça va être très court en français. Et je vais globalement dire la même chose que mes collègues. D'abord, merci au PNUD, merci à l'auditeur et merci au secrétariat. Nous sommes également d'accord, évidemment, pour lever les mesures. Et comme on en a parlé dans le point précédent et comme viennent de le mentionner Rob pour les US et Émilie pour Danemark et Norvège, on pense que ce sera utile d'avoir une analyse plus fine de ce cumul de l'exécution et de l'implémentation et de comprendre pourquoi c'est particulièrement élevé au PNUD en comparaison avec les autres agences et comment on peut rééquilibrer et mieux encadrer cette pratique. Merci.
Merci Stéphanie. Jeanne, vous avez la parole.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur William. Je prends la parole pour exprimer plutôt mes sentiments par rapport au rapport sur lequel je n'ai pas d'objection. Par rapport à ce qui est présenté, ils ont été des personnes ressources expérimentées pour examiner au titre de 2023, au titre de 2023, la mise en œuvre des projets par le PNUD. Ce matin, en prenant la parole, j'ai évoqué des questions de gouvernance au niveau des agences, sans nommer d'agence. Je continue de ne pas en nommer, mais je voudrais, si vous me le permettez, inviter le secrétariat à prendre en compte les résultats de cette évaluation externe, mais j'appelle l'attention des membres du Conseil que les questions de fraude, les questions de concussion ont la peau dure et prennent du temps à être corrigées. Je voudrais sûrement, si c'est des positions qui sont prises à l'avance, moi, je ne vais pas opter pour que les restrictions, le suivi spécifique qui est pris par le secrétariat ou par le conseil au préalable ne soit pas levé maintenant. Que nous laissions du temps pour poursuivre ce suivi, répéter cette évaluation externe avant de prendre la décision. même si il devait avoir accepter le rapport, oui, c'est bon, c'est fait, oui, ils ont ouvert les... je puis dire, je ne vais pas relater des faits ici, on peut en parler dans les couloirs, mais nous sommes en 2023 sur des situations de mauvaise gouvernance entre, et c'est des plaintes que nous avons reçues. Et le PNUD s'est inscrit dans un processus, le PNUD, les responsables du PNUD se sont inscrits dans un processus d'évaluer, d'aller chercher les informations. Et que nous avons apprécié au plus haut niveau. Des lettres ont été envoyées au ministère des Affaires étrangères pour que le ministère des Affaires étrangères suive cette gouvernance entre les agences, certaines agences et les organisations de la société civile. C'est des cas avérés. J'ai des plaintes, nous avons des plaintes venant des organisations de la société civile sur la gouvernance des agences par rapport aux ressources faibles et surtout par rapport aux petits financements, aux petites subventions. Donc, je mets de réserve pour donner cutis ou ramener le PNUD dans le suivi normal. Nous devons poursuivre ce suivi spécifique pour certaines agences. Merci.
Merci, Jean. Annette, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Also, thanks very much to John for the report. We'd like to express our appreciation, particularly to UNDP, to reform their operations and comply with all audits. Therefore, support the decision text. We welcome the decision text to terminate the additional requirements related to UNDP described in decision 26 of 2021. In line with the GEF Secretariat's estimation, we would like to appreciate the continued monitoring regarding the separation of implementation and execution functions in the UNDP's GEF portfolio. If you have any further explanation why that is not included in the decision text, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me give the floor to Jonathan.
Thank you, William. Let me just very quickly try to respond to some of the questions, then I'll turn to John, and perhaps some of them are more appropriately answered by UNDP. Particularly the percentage of GEF projects under the NIM modality by UNDP. What we have reported in the Streamline paper is that by reviewing almost 300 projects for GEF 7, we found across all agencies the prevalence in UNDP of dual execution to be about 9.5%. But I know that's different from NIM, so I will stop there on that issue, and then perhaps. And to the question about the decision text, the decision text refers just to the additional requirements and acknowledgement of the report. So we don't have the specific issue of monitoring the implementation and execution issue. It's subsumed under that. So we think that's sufficiently covered. Can I turn, John, to you for the question on quantum and whether you had access to information on the rollout of quantum and anything else, obviously, that you'd like to add, and then we'll turn back to the chair.
Sure. Yes, I think the question on quantum is the one that probably directed to me. Yes, I can confirm that during the course of the third-party review, the UNDP did provide an ability for me to walk through the functionality of Quantum. Quantum has been, UNDP can explain this a lot better, I'm sure, but it's been progressively implemented within UNDP over the last couple of years. And so there have been opportunities for me to also consult with audit reports, which looked in far greater depth and more testing, just to confirm that what is being advertised is being rolled out, in fact. So I was fairly confident based on that I could say that, as I did, that Quantum has been an important element in UNDP's ability to improve its monitoring, improve its level of compliance. Thanks.
I see UNDP has requested the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe I can add a bit of clarification for a couple of the questions. But before that, I just wanted to say a big thank you to John and to all council members for the support provided to UNDP over the last few years. It's been far from an easy journey, as you can imagine, but it is a combination of quite an intense effort organization-wide, which has taken us through several OAI assessments, independent assessments through EY, BDO, as well as the GEF appointed reviewers, Mr. Graham Jocelyn to begin with, KPMG, and then the latest, Mr. Fitzsimon. And these assessments have been very constructive and forward-looking, and they have been incredibly valuable to UNDP. I think in terms of certainly the portfolio that is under NIM, I would answer it the following way. For most bilateral funded projects, it depends what the nature of the project is, and by and large, they are directly implemented by UNDP. This does not mean that UNDP does everything. It simply means that we have more fiduciary control over the resources which are passed on to national level entities to utilize, where ownership still remains at the national level, but UNDP plays a bigger role in direct payments, providing procurement services, and so on. With the GEF portfolio, it's the complete opposite. Most of our projects are by default, given the GEF policy, implemented through national implementation, except in those rare instances where the choice of national implementing partner does not pass our own fiduciary capacity checks, which by definition, according to GEF policy, needs to be comparable to what GEF requires. And where there is a shortcoming in those standards being met, our member states demand that UNDP actually steps in and provides support. This gets us into an obvious conflict with the GEF policy, which is part of the reason why we want to have this discussion and try and sort this out once and for all. It's not a desire for providing execution, it's actually to be compliant with our own policies, which member states have imposed on the organization. So for every instance where we do run into that issue, we do come back to the Secretariat, outline the reasons why execution support is required, and we provide it under the conditions agreed by the Secretariat. Where we can use third parties, we do. But even with third parties, we have to assess their capacity to meet our standards, and it's only where they meet our standards where we can even use them. And that's providing that their cost of execution is within the PMC limit that the GEF policy has. So we end up getting into quite a few knots in this process, which is part of the reason why we are fully supportive of conversation that needs to be had. Because one of the consequences of that is the delay in the approval of projects. And that, I think, is in our collective interest to try and resolve. So hopefully this adds a little bit of color to why a number of conversations that have taken place this morning is relevant, and they are intricately linked. I would like to say that since 2020, the ambitious action plan that UNDP has implemented, we are obviously cautiously proud of that work, but we fully recognize that this is not a linear approach and this is not a finite action. We are very pleased now that we consistently undertake pre-investment screening of project ideas to make sure that we identify key risks upfront, and most importantly, resourcing required at the national level to enhance capacities so that they can manage these projects. Our oversight responsibilities have been more clearly defined so that at all levels of the organization, be it at the country office, regional level, or HQ, everybody is very clear about what their functions are. And this includes on the issue of separation between oversight and execution. And our anti-money laundering policy and countering of financing terrorism policy is also now fully in effect and consistently being applied. And a recent case, which I want to thank the US for raising, in fact, also helped us identify an additional screening requirement when it comes to government officials, which our policy does not allow unless under certain situations. And that is also a learning that we have experienced recently. So we're well aware that this journey for self-improvement is going to take some time, but we are committed, we are vigilant, and we strongly welcome the scrutiny both from our partners at the country level, the media, and we will make sure that we remain steadfast in maintaining the highest levels of standards in due diligence, which we will stress test continuously with independent assessments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, dear council members. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thanks so much, Pradeep, for your intervention in the spirit of clarification for comments and questions that came out of council members. I strongly believe that there is consensus on these draft decisions. Nevertheless, I would like to reflect Jane's from Benin comments in the highlights. And with that, I think that I can ask Council for the decision with regards to this document, which is the GEF document, GEF/C66/11. I see no objections. Thank you so much, council members. Item approved. With this, we will go to our last agenda item for today, the first day of the 66th GEF Council meeting, which is tracking and measuring socioeconomic co-benefits from the GEF investments. Once more, I will ask Jonathan to present document GEF/C66/12, tracking and measuring socioeconomic co-benefits from the GEF investments. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. we're pleased to present the document as outlined by the chair. The GEF results measurement framework elevated the measurement of socioeconomic benefits, co-benefits, as one of its 5 priority actions, further underlined by the replenishment commitment to make progress in this area. Council had asked us to prepare this paper, providing an analysis of how co-benefits are considered at the project and program design and tracked during implementation. The paper explores how agencies and climate funds track socioeconomic benefits. Finally, it suggests some routes forward with concrete next steps as part of the lead up to GEF 9 and its related results measurement framework. The work that we did is informed by and will continue to build on the advisory work from STAP and evidence from IEO evaluations. So we would like to briefly present 3 of the findings from the analysis the team conducted. First, we look within GEF investments. Second, we consider bringing the outside in by reviewing practices across agencies and climate funds. And third, we assess how alternative impact measurement approaches could benefit the GEF. So I don't have a PowerPoint, so let me just speak to these 3 points. First, we know that the achievement of environmental outcomes often achieves additional socioeconomic co-benefits. This is the case for our integrated investments, which directly address the interdependency between human well-being and a healthy environment, but also of the regular focal area projects financed by the GEF. We know, for example, that the conservation of biodiversity resources will go a lot further if it takes place in a partnership with Indigenous communities, and that to make a tangible difference in the area of land restoration, one needs to support local farmers in enhancing resilience. So when reviewing 82 GEF 7 projects, which are not part of integrated programs, the team actually found that nearly a third of these aim for improvement in livelihoods. 41% contribute to strengthening institutional policy and human capacity, while 20% help empower people and communities. So this speaks to how GEF investments make a difference in people's lives. Second, we looked at how agencies and climate funds already track socioeconomic results under their own respective mandates and priorities. What we found is that agencies typically count the number of beneficiaries within the scope of specific investments, such as the number of farmers using climate smart approaches. Agencies also disaggregate this information by gender, as well as sometimes with a focus on youth and beneficiary groups. When it comes to climate change adaptation, climate funds also rely on indicators that capture specifically how their investments benefit the people, as well as the infrastructure of physical assets that receive adaptation support. Third, agencies rely more than just on indicators for socioeconomic impacts. They also increasingly rely on geospatial analysis, overlaid with census data and other data to observe socioeconomic changes in interventions over time. We think this latter aspect has a lot of potential actually for the GEF, and the recent launch of the GEF geospatial platform that we spoke about earlier can support this endeavor. In addition to plotting things like the location of project activities, it allows to overlay many other socioeconomic data sets and satellite imagery that can be interesting. So to summarize, and to reflect comments from some council members in previous sessions, what does this mean for us for the balance of GEF 8? What can we do with this? From the analysis in the paper and the range of practices that we see across agencies, we've identified several possible steps in the lead up to GEF 9 for the GEF to strengthen its capacity to capture and track socioeconomic co-benefits. We've identified 5 of them, and I'll just quickly summarize what those are because you have the paper before you. First, identifying a small number of standard indicators that would provide an aggregate view of the GEF's contribution to socioeconomic co-benefits. Second, exploring practical use cases of geospatial analysis in the context of the GEF portfolio under implementation as a way to highlight changes in the socioeconomic context. Third, better capturing the results of GEF financing for local communities, for young people, for indigenous peoples, where that's applicable and appropriate. Fourth, continuing to leverage further qualitative and narrative reporting to better demonstrate how benefits help achieve global environmental benefits. And finally, at the design stage, this implies for the GEF Secretariat for us to continue ensuring an appropriate consideration of socioeconomic co-benefits as reflected in our results framework. So I would just summarize and conclude, I guess, that the paper takes the view that this is all possible. If it's done in coordination with others, with climate funds, with agencies, in a way that we think can benefit countries and minimize the additional reporting and other efforts that may be accompanied by it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. The floor is open for comments or questions. Yes, Faisal has requested the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The GEF CSO network recognizes the importance of tracking and measuring socioeconomic co-benefits from GEF instruments. The inclusion of activities and resources to help generate socioeconomic co-benefits is often critical to enhancing the engagement and support of indigenous peoples and local communities in the implementation and sustainability of GEF interventions. In order to secure global environment benefits, new sustainable approaches to development and economic activities must be adopted. This will only take place if these approaches are economically viable and bring direct benefits to stakeholders. As land degradation and climate change create widespread disruption, a whole of society approach to development is contingent on provision of socioeconomic alternatives to local communities. As such, socioeconomic benefits should increasingly become part of main project targets rather than just co-benefits. The network strongly supports the proposal in paragraph 24 of the paper to better capture and monitor the results of GEF financing for indigenous peoples and local communities, civil society, and youth. We believe that this tracking should include monitoring of both direct and indirect benefits, as well as specific tracking and reporting of funds channeled from GEF projects directly to indigenous peoples' organizations, as well as civil society organizations. We believe that collection of such information can best be done through participatory monitoring with the inclusion of indigenous people and local community, indigenous peoples' organizations, and civil society organizations. In addition, we believe that GEF should strongly consider adopting a similar target as has been adopted last year by the Global Biodiversity Fund framework, and that is to set a target that projects to directly support actions by indigenous people and local communities for implementation in the focal areas of GEF will be encouraged on a country-driven basis with a view to collectively achieving an aspirational program share of 20% at the portfolio level by 2030. Support should also be provided by GEF to build the capacity of indigenous peoples' organizations and CSOs to develop, implement, and monitor projects to achieve GEF targets, while at the same time generating socioeconomic benefits to IPLCs. We believe that stronger efforts should be made to assess the gender-related aspects of socioeconomic benefits of GEF projects. At such an analysis of gender disaggregated socioeconomic data and also to review gender action plans to assess the inclusion of activities that may generate direct socioeconomic benefits. Finally, we think it's important to recognize that from the point of view of civil society, and in particular of indigenous peoples, women and youth, and all types of vulnerable populations, that socioeconomic and even environment performance indicators should not be fixed or standardized for all projects, but should be subjective and vary from place to place and sector to sector. GEF and GEF agencies should therefore ensure that they adopt a project and indicator development style that is in line with the strategic socioeconomic interests at the local and sector level. Finally, I'd like to thank my civil society colleagues who are online for contributing live directly to the development and refinement of the statements presented during the council today. And also to note that copies of the statements from the GEF Civil Society Network are being made available to the Secretariat and Council members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faisal. Andre, you have the floor.
Thank you. We would like to thank the Secretariat for its efforts and reflections, which do look substantial. And we agree with the recommended decision, and in particular look forward to a potential limited set of key indicators to track and measure socioeconomic co-benefits from GEF investments for inclusion in the results management framework under GEF 9. We also appreciate that this paper and the next steps proposed taking up of one of the key recommendations of the evaluation on the community-based approaches. We do have a small remark on the access to essential services, if this has not already been considered, that was not clear to us. We think that it will be essential that not only the access is measured, but also the quality of such services and also the satisfaction of the users of such services is measured. And finally, we have from our Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation some experiences made and would be happy to share the respective capitalization products as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. Richard, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you to the Secretariat for the work you've done to embed an integrated approach into the GEF to capture both global environmental benefits and tangible socioeconomic benefits and co-benefits. We, like other countries, recognize the importance of human health and well-being as part of a healthy environment globally. They go together hand in hand. We support the ongoing inclusion of socioeconomic benefits in the work program, and we're happy to support the approach that's set out. One point that we want to recognise is the efforts being made not to add significant additional indicators, because we need to recognise the impost of collecting this information. I think there's already 40 already. I think the approach that's been set out is the right one, but if we were to look at additional indicators in the future, we may need to also look at rationalisation as part of that process. It's a balancing act of getting the right information to that of the impost. We see value in the pathway forward and consider each has the potential to improve the results infrastructure. Given the importance of Indigenous peoples and local communities and the target set for the GBFF would support further work by the GEF to improve data capture and monitoring for IPLC groups. We also encourage the GEF to prioritise coordination, as has been highlighted, with other funds to ensure that the information is captured and presented in a coherent way that can be measured across funds, and also to minimise the impact on the agencies collecting the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Laura Rajaniemi, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. We are so happy that implementing agencies have started tracking these benefits, and some implementing agencies actually consider the socio-economic benefits the most significant result. We hope that GEF and its implementing agencies will continue to do the utmost to properly track and measure socioeconomic benefits. And finally, IFAD has actually good experience in the food systems, and they have a very good reporting on impact. We hope that the food systems IB can benefit from IFAD's experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramon, you have the floor.
Gracias, Jonathan, por la presentación. Seré muy breve porque muchas de las cuestiones ya se han dicho. Simplemente queríamos indicar que apoyamos los próximos pasos que ha propuesto la Secretaría. Creemos que trabajar para mejorar el seguimiento de los cobeneficios socioeconómicos es de gran importancia para valorar correctamente el coste-beneficio de los resultados ambientales. La mejora del impacto socioeconómico de los proyectos del GEF no puede lograrse a menos que seamos capaces de medir adecuadamente y hacer un seguimiento de los indicadores. Y queremos indicar que la creciente complejidad en la arquitectura internacional de financiación ambiental y climática puede conducir a un problema de fragmentación e incoherencia en el acceso a los recursos. Por eso es esencial desarrollar enfoques comunes entre los distintos fondos para el medio ambiente y el clima. Y esta es una de las prioridades del G20 para este año y en lo que hay que trabajar. Por tanto, simplemente acabo que en lo que respecta a los próximos pasos, es de suma importancia avanzar en este trabajo de cara al GEF 9 y garantizar la coherencia en el uso de indicadores con un enfoque compartido con el resto de fondos dedicados a esta temática, la temática ambiental y climática. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Emily, you have the floor.
Thank you. Our constituency would also like to thank Jonathan for the presentation and also to the GEF Secretariat for preparing this paper. Having a better understanding of the socioeconomic benefits is critical, as this is also a key element to ensure the sustainability and durability of GEF investments beyond project closure. Based on the review of the GEF 7 sample, we note that only a third of the assessed projects include social co-benefit indicators, whereas this number is even lower for the economic indicators, where only 26% of projects reports gains in employment and in the agriculture sector. We would like to see a higher inclusion of socioeconomic indicators applied in projects, and we would also encourage this integration into the results measurement framework for GEF 9. In this regard, the document also seems to affirm that there is only an opportunity at project design and development stage to include socioeconomic benefits. However, we believe that this should rather be a requirement and would also suggest to include this as one of the follow-up measures. We would also like to request that the indicators related to climate change resilience are included as a suggested pathway. We know that climate risks and hazards will continue to increasingly impact populations and ecosystems, and it's important to measure the contributions from GEF investments across focal areas towards building resilience and strengthen adaptation. In this regard, we also note the preliminary findings from the STAP report on climate change adaptation in the GEF Trust Fund, which we believe are important and should be acted upon. Furthermore, we would also like to know whether tracking of benefits and results in terms of capacity building of executing entities is done at any level. And if not, we would suggest starting tracking such reporting and results. And finally, we would also just like to request a bit of clarity in terms of the timing for the follow-up actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jeffrey from FAO, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. FAO welcomes this report and the GEF's efforts to strengthen its capacity to capture and track socioeconomic benefits, co-benefits. Even though we design these GEF projects to achieve environmental outcomes, at the end of the day, they are all about people. They're all about people doing things differently. And so we fully support this, and we look forward to being involved in the process of establishing some of these indicators. And in fact, FAO may have some tools and approaches that would be relevant to that effort. And one final point, we see this is also highly relevant to the small grants program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Laura Bermúdez, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias por la presentación. Nuestra circunscripción quiere agradecer el documento sobre seguimiento y medición de impacto socioeconómico de los beneficios conjuntos de las inversiones del GEF. Creemos firmemente en la necesidad de evidenciar esos cobeneficios socioeconómicos de las inversiones y también de la cofinanciación nacional asociada. El enfoque basado en comunidades es fundamental para alcanzar esos beneficios ambientales globales. Y en particular quisiéramos apoyar la intervención del representante de las organizaciones de la sociedad civil sobre la importancia del monitoreo comunitario y la valoración de las acciones colectivas de pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales, así como el apoyo a la implementación de planes de acción como el relacionado con género. Todos estos temas han sido abordados ampliamente en diferentes acuerdos internacionales y en particular en el marco global de biodiversidad, donde tenemos la tarea de identificar precisamente esos indicadores específicos estándar para medir los cobeneficios socioeconómicos, de manera que esto será también un aporte desde el GEF a los acuerdos que tenemos que concretar para la próxima COP16. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Laura. Stephanie, you have the floor.
Merci, je vais m'exprimer en français. D'abord, la France remercie sincèrement le secrétariat pour ce travail d'analyse qui est vraiment très intéressant sur les bénéfices socio-économiques. J'aimerais reprendre le terme qu'a utilisé notre collègue représentant des OSC, le terme bénéfice et non pas co-bénéfice. Nous voulons rappeler en particulier le premier pilier du pacte de Paris pour les peuples et la planète, à savoir ne pas opposer la question environnementale et la question du développement. Et nous sommes également dans cette lignée très attentifs à l'une des recommandations faites par le secrétariat dans ce document, à savoir un meilleur suivi des résultats du financement du FEM pour les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales, la société civile et les jeunes. Il s'agit pour nous d'un objectif central à mettre en œuvre dans les politiques de solidarité internationale. Merci.
Merci. Karen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sweden welcomes the report on this important topic, and thank you, Jonathan, for presenting it. I think you've worked very hard today. This is the last point on the agenda. In the interest of time, I will be very brief. We note that 1/3 of GEF projects and programs delivers and tracks socioeconomic co-benefits. Ideally, we would like to see this number increase substantially, but it's a good start, and it's important that we now advance on outlining steps to improve the tracking of these co-benefits to enable an even more clear socioeconomic perspective in GEF 9 and the whole of society approach. So we support the decision text as it stands. Important to also do this across the GEF family of funds, including LDCF, SECF, and the GBF fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sujoshi, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the Secretariat effort to prepare the report. We support the 5 way forward point indicated by the GEF Secretariat with a view to improving measurement method for engineering the GEF project, simultaneously realize environmental and socioeconomic co-benefit and promote maximization of project effectiveness and efficiency. We would also like to ask the GEF to continue consideration, in particular, what targets should be set in terms of socioeconomic co-benefit and what indicators should be established to identify the contribution of the concrete project or program and finding achievement for GEF as a whole to go. I believe providing global environmental benefit, including socioeconomic co-benefit, is the most important role of the GEF. Furthermore, considering the improvement of monitoring, evaluation, and learning about socio-economic co-benefit in consistent manner with the effort of the other climate and environmental funds, as explained in the chapter about the way forward, will be contributed to cost effectiveness and important. We hope that GEF will continue its effort to do so. Thank you, and back to Chair.
Thank you very much. Aliona, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, first, congratulations on the report. And of course, the socio-economical benefit, let's face it, it's a really fashionable topic. And with the discussion with the donors, we quite see, you know, like a top indicator, and it's really like quite highly demanded. Nevertheless, we think on behalf of the constituent that it is necessary to address several issues. Like the first one, it should be clear and accessible standards, indicators that would provide aggregated view. And this is really, it's really important to be accessible depending on the region, depending on the project, and it's really have to be kind of general, but in the same time unique. And this is your job. It's quite hard job. Yeah. Let's jump to the second one with the alternate measures, measurement practices. And here I would say that in some regions, like for example, we have a lot of youth involvement, and in other regions we have lack of this. So it depends on the region. We have to really focus on the problem that exists there. So let's focus on the problem, and let's focus on the necessity, and not to overwhelm, you know, some projects. And I can tell you from my previous experience working in the projects where, you know, we had to find these women, youth, civil society, and so on and so forth. So let's focus on the problems, and let's not overwhelm and not, you know, repeat the projects. And on the third one, on the qualitative and narrative reporting, I would say that this is really important, because we all know that the qualitative results are the best implemented, have best implemented success. Sometimes focusing on the quantitative, you know, and having 3,000 beneficiaries, you know, you're looking for these beneficiaries, but actually you're forgetting what you started from the idea of the project, from the implementing of the project. So let's have, you know, both going aligned with the quantitative and qualitative. And it's really important to get to the right results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ben, you have the floor.
Many thanks, William. Again, to be brief, we very much support this paper and decision. It's particularly valuable to see another action from the GEF Aid Replenishment Agreement come forward. It's obviously very important to take these issues forward seriously. We support the point which was made by our CSO colleagues on IPLCs and youth. We also think it's interesting to note, and it's useful to see that Jeff talking about the considerations to look at the results management framework again in GEF 9. Australia, I think, mentioned in terms of it needs to be in coherence with other funds, particularly the GCF, under the long-term vision. We very much support that too. And finally, France made a good point regards talking about whether it's benefits rather than co-benefits, regards the need to consider environmental development and the sorts of funding we provide to these funds like GEF. Many thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Antonella, you have the floor.
Oh, sí. Muchas gracias, William. Queremos expresar nuestro agradecimiento por la elaboración del documento y creo que ya por tercera vez a Jonathan por la presentación. Hoy te ha tocado un día bastante agitado. Bueno, a ver, en concreto, consideramos que el marco propuesto está en línea con la recomendación de política acordada en el GEF 8 que insta a mejorar la medición de los co-beneficios socioeconómicos en la presentación de resultados y su consideración en el diseño de proyectos financiados por el GEF, por lo que celebramos que se haya presentado. Consideramos que es fundamental que este marco sea coherente con los esfuerzos de simplificación sobre los cuales hemos venido discutiendo a lo largo de esta jornada. Además, creemos que es importante que se tomen precauciones al diseñar indicadores estandarizados. En este sentido, asegurar la participación de los países en su definición y que los mismos sean ajustados según sus particularidades y sus circunstancias nacionales, explorando la posibilidad de tener resultados con textos específicos. Para nosotros eso es importante. También destacar la relevancia de la medición cualitativa junto con la cuantitativa, teniendo en cuenta que los beneficios intangibles también son relevantes, especialmente en términos de beneficios sociales. Y por último, en relación a la medición, consideramos que es necesario ser cautelosos al definir y medir los cobeneficios, ya que pueden ser multifactoriales. Y bueno, hay que tener en cuenta que no todo lo observado es resultado exclusivo de los proyectos, por lo que se debe considerar la contribución de todos los actores y los factores involucrados en los resultados de los proyectos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Barbara, you have the floor.
Thanks very much. First, thank you very much for your paper. I don't think you will get tired of us saying that, so I'll do it one more time. Certainly supportive of the tracking and measuring of socioeconomic co-benefits. In particular, and I think it's been mentioned previously, when it comes to the financing for Indigenous peoples and advancing gender equality. In terms of previous speakers heard reference to standardization and coherency, I think those are key, but I would also add inclusive in terms of the indicators, in terms of what we need to have as a guide for the way forward. And I really appreciated, Jonathan, you sort of outlining those 5 elements that you see in the short to medium term, and just reinforcing certainly the message that you put on the table also, that there's work to be done now and also in the context of GEF 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So back to Jonathan.
Thank you, William. Thank you to all the council members for what we think is a strong support for moving in this direction, and thanks for the notes of appreciation. I would just say that I may be presenting it, but we have a lean but very, very dedicated and professional results team led by Cyril here. So just quickly to respond to some of the comments about moving into a programming direction, particularly from the CSO network. I mean, first, this is about monitoring, tracking, and reporting, and then through a replenishment process, we can get direction and guidance on where to go in terms of how to program resources. So this is what we think is an important first step. The GEF is a global environment facility, and so our achievement of GEBs is front and center. But as we outline in the paper, the socioeconomic co-benefits are also extremely important, because this is ultimately about people, healthy planet, healthy people. Thank you for the offers of support as we move forward on this from Switzerland and others, including from the agencies. With respect to collaboration with other funds, there was already some of this going on. There is a collaboration platform across the climate funds that we participate in, and so they meet regularly and work on these issues. Whether socioeconomic indicators are already included in our project monitoring, yes, this is already systematically included in projects. There is a dedicated field in the CEO endorsement template, and so that information is provided there. A question about the timeline for this. I mean, I think a number of council members have indicated that this is something we will implement in the lead up to GEF 9, and that there has to be a balance between this and the streamlining agenda, obviously. So there's work to make sure that we strike that balance. And I would just close by saying that indeed this is a step toward GEF 9 where that is the appropriate place for targets to be established. But first, let's measure, let's report, and enable our participants to make informed decisions. Thank you, Chair. With that, I'll pass back to you.
Thanks, Jonathan, and my gratitude as well with our results team for being able to present this agenda item. I don't see any other council member asking for the floor, so I would like to invite council to adopt the draft decision included in the document GEF/C66/12. I see no objections. Agenda item approved. Thank you so much. With this, we get to our final item of today. Thanks for the endurance of all council members on our first GEF 66 GEF Trust Fund Council meeting. I will be working so you all will receive a draft decision with regards to agenda item number 5, which we agree on doing an adjustment to the streamlining of the GEF project cycle. You'll have this proposed draft in your inbox very soon. And I plan to open tomorrow's session with that agenda item, which is streamlining the GEF project cycle. Let me pass it over to William so we can see if there's some final housekeeping items. So, William.
Thank you very much. So the SRC, the Selection and Review Committee, will be meeting in the Yosemite room, the second floor on the tower on the other side. And there'll be some nourishment there for you, and you can have the room as long as you need. So have a good meeting, and we see you tomorrow punctually, please. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.